I want to bring in former federal prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst Paul Butler, also with us, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. So the Trump administration, Lisa, over and over again has said we can't pay up. Does anything about this indicate they're going to have to or that they will?
Both, I would say, yes, with some caveats. So there was a status report that both parties submitted to the court this morning. In it, the government is saying that they can ensure that all of the plaintiffs will be paid for legitimate payments, and I'm going to caveat that with an asterisk, within the next 10 days, and that non-plaintiffs, meaning other people who were not party to this lawsuit, but also who deserve payments for already contracted for, already completed work, should be paid within 30 to 45 days. That having been said, they also seem to be introducing some new wrinkles. They say it's going to take them time to pay, notwithstanding the fact that previous to the inauguration of President Trump, they could process thousands of payments overnight. It's going to take time now because they need to legitimately assure themselves that the work has been done, that it was work that was contracted for. They seem to be introducing a number of additional review steps that weren't originally contemplated, but aren't necessarily barred by the temporary restraining order in place in the case, Chris.
So what does the judge do in a case like this, Paul? And what happens if they don't pay up? What if they say, oh, well, we don't think this person did the work, so we're not going to pay them?
That's the question of our times, Chris, because we might see this constitutional crisis ushered in. So this is an early legal test over how much power Trump has to reallocate money that's already been appropriated by Congress. The contractors and grant recipients say that the president doesn't have the authority to dismantle an independent federal agency like USAID, and also that the president doesn't have the power to cancel spending that's already been authorized by Congress. So that's what the judge has to decide. But in the meantime, there's this discrete issue about whether contractors who've already completed work need to get paid. So the Supreme Court said yesterday in that 5-4 decision, yes, they do need to get paid, asked the judge to work out a reasonable payment plan, but we still have the larger issue pending. Trump froze foreign aid from USAID. The contractors have asked that freeze be unlifted, and that's what the judge will decide, whether there's a reason to temporarily block the freeze while the judge decides the merits of the case.
So, Lisa, I understand that the president's lawyers are back in front of the same judge right now, right? What's going on there?
So today, Chris, the hearing is about whether or not this existing temporary restraining order becomes something more permanent called a preliminary injunction that has an indefinite time span. If the court enters a preliminary injunction, what he will likely do is not only order that they be paid, but order that they be paid according to certain steps and on a time certain. But most importantly, that puts the government in a position to appeal that ruling to a federal appeals court. And then we're really off to the races in terms of a merits-based determination in front of the Supreme Court, not a sort of an emergency, do you have to pay right now? How long do you have to pay? But something that really takes into account the bigger, more fundamental issue here, which is what Paul mentioned. Does a president have any constitutional authority to freeze funding that's already been appropriated by Congress and already even been contracted for and through these contracts with USAID contractors?
Okay, so meantime, Paul, new twist. The New York Times is reporting, quote, the acting head of the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, told members of Congress on Wednesday that his staff was preparing potential criminal referrals targeting individuals who misuse taxpayer dollars intended for foreign development programs. This is according to several people familiar with his comments. What is that about, and what would that even look like?
You know, it's hard to know because there's not a whole lot of transparency about how this criminal prosecution could potentially occur or even what the charges would be. There's a lot of distrust around Trump's takeover of USAID, again, because of this lack of transparency. So I think we'll have to wait and see. We know that the Trump administration has been accused by many of trying to weaponize the criminal legal system, and especially the Justice Department, for its own political ends. So is that an incursion by Trump's agents in USAID to try to weaponize the system, or is there legitimate fraud? What we do know from earlier audits is that there hasn't been a whole lot of fraud and waste in USAID. And in fact, they've been saving literally millions of lives, which is why the grant recipients say it's so important why this litigation is pending for the grants to be unfrozen so that people can get their HIV and malaria medicines.